Here is something no one taught you in school. The world map hanging in your classroom, the one you memorized, the one printed in every atlas, every geography textbook, every government-issued educational material for the last 100 years. It is not the oldest version. It is not even close to the oldest version. And the versions that came before it, the ones used by cartographers, explorers, and navigators for centuries, showed something that the current map does not. They showed land masses, large ones, named ones. Land masses that appeared on hundreds of separate maps, produced by dozens of separate cartographic traditions, across multiple continents, over multiple centuries, and then, within a narrow window of time, stopped appearing. Not because the land disappeared, because the maps were changed. Let me start with what we are told. We are told that early cartographers were simply wrong, that the ancient and medieval maps showing strange southern continents, unfamiliar northern land masses, and differently proportioned oceans were the product of speculation, of myth, of sailors filling in blank spaces with imagination. We are told that as knowledge improved, as explorers circumnavigated the globe and measurement became precise, the incorrect features were removed and the accurate world map we use today emerged naturally from that process. Progress. Correction. The march of rational science replacing guesswork. That is the story. But here is the first anomaly. Some of those removed land masses were not guesses. They were drawn with a specificity that guessing does not produce. The Piri Reis map. 1513. A Turkish admiral compiles a chart of the known world and includes at its southern edge a detailed coastline that should not exist. A coastline that matches, with a precision that has been verified by modern Antarctic survey data, the subglacial topography of Antarctica. Antarctica, officially undiscovered until 1820. Antarctica, which has been covered under ice for thousands of years. The map predates the official discovery by 300 years, and it shows the land beneath the ice. The official explanation is that this was a coincidence, or that Piri Reis copied from older sources that no longer exist. Either answer raises its own impossible question. If he copied from older sources, what were those sources? Who made them? And if they made them, when? This raises a simple but critical question. What were the older sources? Because Piri Reis was not alone. The Ortelius Phineas map of 1531 shows the same southern continent, in greater detail, with river systems, with what appear to be ice-free coastal features, with a shape that matches the Antarctic landmass more closely than anything a medieval cartographer should have been capable of inventing. The Wash map of 1754 shows Antarctica divided into two landmasses by an interior sea, a feature that was only confirmed by seismic survey in the 20th century. These are not fringe documents. These are catalogued, authenticated, and housed in major institutional archives. The pattern repeats with unsettling precision. Now here is where it becomes impossible to ignore. It is not only the South. Look north. Historical maps from the 15th, 16th, and 17th centuries show a northern polar continent, a large landmass centered near the top of the world, which cartographers called Hyperborea, or sometimes simply the Arctic continent. The maps are detailed. They show interior geography, mountain ranges, river systems, a central sea. They appear on maps from Mercator, from Ortelius, from the Flemish cartographic tradition that produced some of the most technically sophisticated geographic documents of the early modern period. These are not marginal notations. These are prominent features on the authoritative world maps of their era. And then, across the late 18th and early 19th centuries, roughly the same window we have been examining, roughly the same period in which Tartaria was contracting on the maps, in which city names across France and America were being administratively revised, the northern continent disappeared from cartographic tradition, retired, reclassified as a misunderstanding, gone. The evidence suggests something much larger was being quietly concluded, and here's the strangest part. The disappearance was not uniform. It was not gradual. It followed a pattern. First, the land masses were minimized on the maps. Then they were labeled as speculative. Then they were removed entirely. And the window in which all of this happened is the same window. The same 100-year corridor between roughly 1750 and 1900 in which so many other things were being reorganized. Names changed, histories revised, institutions demolished, maps redrawn. The evidence suggests that this was not a series of unconnected scholarly corrections. It suggests a coordinated editorial process applied simultaneously to the geographic record across multiple nations and cartographic traditions. I keep returning to what I call the coordination problem, because for this to be explained as simple scientific progress, you would need cartographers in England, France, the Netherlands, Portugal, and the Ottoman Empire to all independently reach the same conclusions about the same land masses at the same time, and to all independently decide that those features did not belong on a modern map, without a conference, without a published consensus, without a documented argument. The official history says yes, all of that happened because the ideas were correct, and correct ideas spread. But correct ideas spread through debate, through published disagreement, through the kind of academic friction that leaves a record. There is no record of that debate here. The landmasses simply stopped appearing. This raises a question I cannot answer, but cannot stop asking. Was someone deciding what the world was allowed to look like? Because there is one more layer, and I want to handle it carefully. There are places on this earth today that carry the memory of what the maps removed. Oral traditions from cultures on every inhabited continent describe land that was once above the sea and is no longer. The Sunday land traditions of Southeast Asia, the Tamil records of Komori Kingdom, a southern continent swallowed by the ocean, the Mu traditions of the Pacific, cultures separated by thousands of miles of open water, describing the same memory of a connected landmass, describing the same event, describing the same loss. These are not all connected by a common colonial source. Some of these traditions were documented before Western contact. Some of them predate any cartographic interaction with European civilization, and they describe landmasses in regions where the geological record, specifically the bathymetric data beneath the ocean surface, shows continental shelves, elevated plains, ancient river valleys, now submerged, consistent with habitable land existing within a human timescale. The mainstream response to this is silence, not refutation. Not here is the evidence that contradicts the claim. Silence. And here's the strangest part. The silence is itself a pattern. The silver moon illuminated calm lake surface, creating writ the dance surface. The same tendency to file these questions under fringe and move on appears every time the inquiry leads toward the possibility that the official timeline of human civilization does not account for everything that came before. I am not a geologist. I am not a cartographer. I am not making a scientific claim. I am asking what we actually know about why the maps changed, and why the answer every single time appears to be, we do not ask that question. The Puri-Rice map exists. The Ortelius-Phineas map exists. The Hyperborea maps exist. The submerged continental shelves exist. The oral traditions exist. The cartographic transition window exists. None of these facts have disappeared. They have simply been moved, filed away, stripped of their context, labeled as anomaly, as coincidence, as the errors of less sophisticated minds. And now I want to leave you with a few questions. Not answers, questions. Why does the cartographic revision happen in the same historical window as the place name revisions, the institutional demolitions, the administrative reorganizations? Why do maps from independent traditions across 3 centuries show landmasses in locations where the ocean floor still carries the topographic signature of ancient land? Why do the oral traditions of cultures with no documented contact with each other describe the same submerged geography? And why, when you begin pulling on any one of these threads, do you find yourself arriving at the same window, the same coordinated, globally synchronized erasure, over and over again? The maps were changed. That is not a theory. That is a documented historical fact. The only question is what they were changed to remove, and why someone needed it gone before the next version of the world could begin.